Hello? Hello?
Podcast Network Asia.
Hi, this is Michael Waits, and welcome back to the Asia Tech Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dave Malhotra, CEO and lead hustler at SoldOutt, that's with 2 T's, by the way, and the founder at ShakeSphere, which is just made hard for me to pronounce. I almost said Shakespeare, but I guess that's on purpose. Dave, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Michael. Thanks for inviting me for the talk. How are you doing today?
I am super, actually really super. January's been an incredible month for me, so everything's going well. Can you give my listeners a little bit of your background for context, and then I just want to jump in, yeah?
I'm Dave. I actually do a lot of things, but the main ones that I'm more focused on is my own business called ShakeSphere. ShakeSphere is a company that focuses on innovation, building new startups, coming up with ideas and like implementing it really fast. Our idea is to launch any product in 2 weeks or days if possible. So we work with like corporates like Central Group, some other guys like we have some projects working with ThaiBev, one of their companies, and a few other guys in Central in the corporate world. Our team actually works with like Toyota, Com7, and CP, and the other guys as well. So we structured quite a bit different than the other guys in the market, though. Like first of all, we don't hire full-time staff. I've worked in that environment before, and I prefer that we hire the right people for the right job, for the right project, and that's how we built a food delivery app for Central 2 years ago. And then we built startups in Hong Kong, in Indonesia. One of an ex-Lazada guy, we built an insure tech startup for them, the MVPs. And in Hong Kong, we built a business matching for sourcing products from China while sitting in the US and during this pandemic, and how you can achieve all of this.
But how did you get into this, Dave? I mean, just from the sound of your voice, you don't sound that old, right? Like if you were 60, all this would make sense to me. But you sound more like what, mid to late 30s, right?
Yeah, I'm 36.
Okay.
So I guess what's crazy, it started with, I think my family had a computer when I was like probably 4 or 5 years old.
Did they really?
Yeah, but that was maybe a bit of designing stuff on really, really, really basic software. And
what kind of computer was it? Was it a Windows computer or a Macintosh?
It was a Commodore. I don't know if you heard of it.
Of course, a Commodore. No, but that's actually really interesting, because if your parents owned, like, what was their main business? And we'll get back to that in a second. What was their main business when they had this Commodore?
My family has been in the tailoring business for the last 40 years already. We're based in Pattaya. Actually, they were in Bangkok, but then they moved to Pattaya like 30 plus years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's how it started. It got me pretty much interested in computers. But then I got my first PC, like my own, like maybe I was 15 or something. But that was when I started to like read up a lot. Like internet is like the biggest invention of all time for me, because it's the opening port to learning and everything, right? So what's interesting is my dad, we had like internet back in 95
Wow.
or 97, yeah.
But what did you have, like a 56K modem or a 28K modem?
Yeah, that was crazy. I didn't know what it was, but then my dad showed me and how you can email and stuff like that. That was crazy.
But what is it about? So this is interesting to me, because your dad is obviously, like, how old is your dad, if you don't mind me asking?
He's almost 70 now.
He's almost 70. So if you think about it, 21 years ago when you were 15 years old,
yeah,
your dad was in his 50s.
Yeah.
And unless he was just like an uber geek, because back then, no smartphones, actually even no feature phones. That's not true, actually. There were feature phones, but no smartphones. And he was living in Pattaya, which is not known as sort of a hotbed of technology development. Mm-hmm. What was it about your dad that got him so interested? And I will also say this, owning a Commodore means your dad made a choice.
Yeah.
Right? Because Commodore, which people don't know really, was kind of on the cutting edge of developments of graphical user interfaces and stuff like that. They were outpaced by Apple, obviously, and then later by Windows. But your dad made a choice. Yeah. That's just really interesting.
I wonder as well, why would, it's not just my dad, it was my uncle, who also was very much into computers. He taught me a lot about it.
Right.
He had a lot of games, not the ones on my dad's computer. I think it was
Fair
the
enough.
influence from
fair enough.
my dad, my uncle. I think I don't know why he chose Commodore, but I can remember vividly that we had a few of them until we got the first PC computer.
You almost said real PC, didn't you? I could hear it, like, unless I'm misunderstanding. But yeah. And what was your first PC? Was it a Dell? Like, what was it?
I think it was a what do you call it, like a custom build.
So you built it yourself.
Yeah, I didn't build it myself, but I do know a lot about it back then already. But
Right.
I didn't build it myself. I think my dad bought it from some expat. Like he had a few, or he built it or something like that, and he gave one to
I love it.
one to me and my brother, and the other one to I think my other brother or something like that. Yeah.
I love it. But what's the connection between like being in the tailoring business and then being so interested in technology?
Tailoring is one interesting business. It actually opens up the world for a lot of people, and especially,
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of families with Indian background who started like that. And there's one interesting key thing that opened up to our to a big world is we fly a lot to Europe.
Fabric and
get
stuff like that, yeah.
businesses, right? Or some people go to Hong Kong or
Right.
US, but my family goes to Europe a lot, specifically I think Germany. I guess that's what opened up their world, right? I mean, their generation, and they went there and they bought a lot of tech stuff back. They installed it on their own, experimented and stuff like that. And my dad was very much active in the expat community in Pattaya, right? He was, I think, twice the district governor of Rotary Club in Thailand, and this is like top 4 in Thailand. But it started from like a Rotary Jom Tien, where there was a lot of expat, and he had a lot of expat friends. I guess that's his starting point of understanding that maybe there's something more than a tailoring business, right? And eventually he decided to start the first English language newspaper in Pattaya, called the Pattaya Mail. It was 1993, so it's 27 years ago. It's going to be 28 years now. So I remember the first few days of this, and again, so when that happened, he hired a lot of editors and expats from the US, from Germany, from Austria, and these people, obviously they come with computers, right? So because you can't do layouts of a newspaper, or you can't edit stuff without computers. So we started having a lot of computers in the office, and that was when I started exploring even more in like publishing and editing, and I remember doing my first crossword puzzle column. I had my own column when I was like in grade 5 or something. Yeah, like I was 10 years old and I had that, and I would design my own crossword puzzles. I was in a boarding school. I would create these puzzles in boarding school. Like I was in India. It's a British. It was a Catholic school, like old British building, and it's called St. George's College, up on the hills. Yeah, I mean, I would create like puzzles and interesting stuff for my column during the 9 months that I was in India, and then I would come back and publish it during the 3 months that I'm back here. So I guess it started from there. I started doing a lot of designing. Photoshop was pretty much easy for me when I was like 15 years old, you know, like it kind of like that kind of sparked the idea. And I remember I think at one point my dad was like, hey, go learn some web designing and something like that. And I think that one of the most interesting thing about Pattaya Mail is that we started news website in 1997.
Online? So I was going to ask you, when did it go digital? It went online in 1997. I'm just trying to remember what I was doing in 1997. Yeah, I was already sitting on a trading desk. But I get it though, because the internet obviously was just starting to become a thing. And I remember sitting on the trading desk and thinking, if the New York Times or the Washington Post or the Wall Street Journal had a website, we could get the news faster than anybody else, which meant that we could trade better because we'd have more information.
Yeah.
So fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking at like, so if Amazon started in 94, right? So we started in 97, and I'm sure back then, like in Thailand, probably none of the news outlets out there actually had websites. Yeah. I'm not sure if Bangkok Post had it, but I think it kind of started from, the internal team that they had. I think the lead, the guy who handles all the layout, he also knows a bit of HTML or something like that. And he started that, right? And this is like,
Yeah, because back then there were no real tools to do it. I mean, there was Microsoft Front Page, but otherwise there wasn't much.
Yeah,
out there,
Front
right?
Page I think came pretty much later, but I think they were coding on maybe Notepad or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah.
So yeah, that was a starting point. It really sparked the idea that this is really cool. You can build this stuff, and I think I started building my own, like, the first website, a personal website, when I think it was 98. Maybe around 15 something years old. Yeah.
It makes sense though, right? I mean, back in 1998, you started having Windows 98 came out, and it was much better than any other version of Windows had been previously, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, tools had started to get built. If you understood anything about programming or HTML, that was the time to really start. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Windows 98 changed pretty much everything in the publishing world.
Everything.
You can drag folders around and all of that stuff. Because the one before that was, I hated it.
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, it was Windows 3.0. I can't remember what it was. It was terrible. I remember, I think the introduction to Windows 98 was the Rolling Stones, Start Me Up. Do I have that right, or do I remember that incorrectly? I can't remember.
I don't remember. So I don't even know that Apple and all that was doing a lot of that during those days, because I don't think we were exposed to much of that technology back in the days, right? And I was probably too young to read a tech magazine or something like that.
I get it, yeah.
But yeah, 98 was, like, Windows 98 was something that really changed the world in the way that even when they came out with Windows 2000, right? I hated 2000 because 98 was more practical.
Right. Because it didn't have all the bloat that was associated with it. One of the biggest problems with Microsoft after Windows 98 was that they just added so much stuff that people didn't need.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It only changed again when they came out with the XP, right? XP changed the design, changed a lot of, like, the UI and stuff like that. And then after that, I don't think anybody wanted to change again until, I think, Windows 7 or something.
So do you remember when Vista came out? Because I'll put it this way, we were using XP at work. And up until XP, every time Microsoft came out with a new operating system, we just upgraded. So the IT teams would just upgrade it. And when Vista came out, the employees, I think I was at Goldman Sachs at the time, maybe, I can't remember where exactly. But people were just like, no, we just we don't want Vista.
Yeah, I hated it. I remember uninstalling it and then going back to XP or something.
We never installed it as a firm. Anyway, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see, like, the evolution of all of this, right? And while I'm talking to you, I realized that, that was the influence I had, like...
Right. It's hard to know when you're going through it, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you go through all of that and I don't realize that... I mean, these are the things I probably realized 10 years ago. That, I started from making my own columns, and that's why when I was in university and there was an exam for Photoshop, I did it in like half an hour in a 3 hours exam because it was so easy, it was so simple because I did it 10 years before that, right? So
when you were a kid, exactly.
Yeah, but that was a story I had back then. But I don't realize that it all connects, right? I think it all connects for a lot of startups today. It all connects for a lot of entrepreneurs today that you get influenced that way, and sometimes it's quite interesting to learn where you or how you came about or where you came from, what brought you here. And like when you read a lot of this inspiration stuff, you always know about when somebody succeed, right? But you don't know how they came about. Like Elon Musk will get a lot of exposure for how he came about because he's one of the most inspiring out there, but that's interesting thing. Sometimes you need to learn about yourself also, how you took that step to get here, and then use that as an inspiration for yourself. Because sometimes you need to pat yourself on the back and say that, hey, I came this far, even though there's still a long way to go. But what's interesting is that we're trying to get inspired by other people, but sometimes you look back and you're like, there's a lot of people that influence you in your life, and a lot of things that influence you brought you here. I don't know off point here, but it's quite interesting. Yeah.
It's actually not off point at all. And I like to call this the fallacy of now. So I think about this a lot, right? In other words, when people meet you, and this is why I like to get people's backgrounds, right? Because there is a backstory that implies what's going to happen in the future. And you don't know about it unless you think about it. Because like I said before, while you're going through it, you're not thinking, I had a computer when I was 4, and this Commodore computer that was in my house is going to get me interested in computers until I'm 36, and then I'm going to build venture. Like, that's not the way it works, right? So it's just interesting, and I think it's definitely part of the story. And I think most people believe that you always are who you are when you meet them, if that makes sense. That's why I call it the fallacy of now. In other words, when people meet me today, they think I've always been a media guy. They don't know that I was sat on a trading desk.
Yeah, when I heard you mentioned it a few minutes ago, I was like, whoa, that's interesting. Yeah.
Right? Because the fallacy is that you just know what you know about me today. And that's why the backstory is really interesting. And it leads into, you're sitting there watching your parents build Pattaya Mail Media Group. And it's been a long journey, but then you've also seen the sort of impact that tech can have on a bunch of different things. And I don't want to talk so much about digital transformation, but as the world moves like apace into this digital space, you've already figured out how to do that. And in a place like Thailand, but even in a place like the United States, there are plenty of companies that just cannot figure it out themselves, and they need sort of external help to do that, right? And there are plenty of companies here that are trying to do it, but not a lot of them that work with Thai Bev, Central Group, CP, Toyota. And I'm guessing, I may be wrong. I'm wrong sometimes. You said you helped an ex-Lazada guy build an insurance business or build the MVP for insurance business in Indonesia. If I guess the company correctly, do I get a prize? Since you didn't mention the name nor the name of the family.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I think I deserve a t-shirt. It sounds to me like LifePal.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you heard about LifePal. Wow. A t-shirt and a beer t-shirt.
So Nicola Roba and I had a recorded conversation. We released an episode today or yesterday for the Asia InsurTech podcast featuring Nicola Roba. So that's why when you said like an ex-Lazada guy, I thought, I may know that guy. But that's interesting, right? So this is through your ShakeSphere business, right?
Yeah. It actually meeting.
Tell me.
The founders of LifeHow was quite interesting because it actually started off with. This is actually a very interesting and crazy story that I keep telling people about. That my company, we don't have a fixed office.
Right. You don't advertise, right? Like.
Yeah, I don't talk about it much, but when I do talk to clients and page projects, I tell them straightforward, this is how we function, because this is an innovation-driven company, and then you're looking for innovation. And my choice of setup is a little different from the other people, because the reason that we don't have a fixed office is I worked in the corporate world for so long. And I realized those cubicle offices, or even if you try to make it open space and everything, right, it still kind of like wraps people, especially when you're in a small team, it wraps people within a room, right? It kind of puts you in a room, and then your boundary is set, right? And I kind of don't like that idea, maybe personally for me.
No. When I was in, can I interrupt you for a second? When I was in corporate, I learned this really early on in Morgan Stanley, right? So I was in initially the fixed income group. And the fixed income group had a different room than the equity group, and they were on the same floor, but a wall and a door separated us. And, in the fixed income team, we thought the guys and gals in the equity team were idiots, right?
Yeah.
But only because we weren't sitting with them. And then if they switched groups, so if some dude from the equity group or some gal from the equity group came into the fixed income group, we were like, brilliant. But the rest of them must be idiots, because it's that what I call the other side of the mountain syndrome, right? It's like if they're over there, they must be bad. And you're right. If you build an office that way, it's bad for morale, I think.
Yeah, and think about this when you look at Google and the other guys out there now. What they do is they try to have an open office, and Google has this idea where at lunchtime they would have a long table, right? Why? Because they want people to dine together at the canteen. It's free. The whole point of doing a free lunch is so that people
actually to get people to interact with each other.
They want the interaction to happen, right? Now, when you know that you scale to a 10,000 or 100,000 people, I don't know how many staff they have, but the thing is, you want to still maintain the feeling of small, the feeling of interaction, and what they want is they want the finance guy to be sitting opposite a marketing guy and next to a tech guy having lunch and discussing something out of their working scope, right? That's interesting because that's how people think of new ideas. You don't think of your new ideas by marketing talking to marketing, and they can discuss as much as they can, but they cannot blow out of the box that much, and I feel that, okay, we are a small company. If we set up an office that when expect to be as big as Google and start giving free lunch, yeah, we give free lunch, but the environment is not right. You're still putting people back, especially when we hire people coming out of corporate world, right? And you put them in the office again, it's the same environment. It's not different. So, I mean, where I'm getting at is the reason that we do this is so that then we started going to Hubba. Hubba is a co-working space, right? And instead of hiring a private office, we decided this is interesting. If you sit in the common area, you're going to meet a lot of expats. You're going to meet a lot of people. There are two things that I like about this. My staff, mostly Thais. I mean, all of them are Thais, but as you know, Thais are very skeptical at speaking English, right? If they don't speak on a daily basis, I have a difficult time telling my staff to actually speak English because it's going to get you everywhere on this planet, So I said, you know what? Do this. We're going to sit at co-working spaces. You're going to change your seats every day. You're going to be sitting at random places, and then you're going to meet a lot of people. And if you meet somebody who speaks English, talk English to them. Just, you can whisper whatever it is, if you're shy, whatever it is, but just do it because that's how you're going to open up. But for me, right, when I joined Hubba and became a member, the thing is, I start to realize that I'm meeting everyone, a new person every day. And in the weird moments, in the random moments, in events and stuff like that. And Hubba does a lot of these events. And I start to realize that this is interesting because I don't have an office as big as Google to do this, right? But now I have instead of having one company, I have 10 companies working in the same space. That's very, very interesting. And think about it, these developers.
It also means, if you have your own office, your developers are just stuck. They're in a little bit of a bubble, right? So they can't even understand best practices from other teams. Yeah. But not only that, they don't get sort of a mental break or an intellectual break. But if you walk around, I did this, right? Because I worked at the Hive on Soy 49, right? For, I don't know, a year and a half. And whenever I kind of got stuck on something, I'd get out of my chair and just walk around, go down to another floor, just chat with people that I didn't know that you were working on.
As I mentioned before, a lot of people have very interesting backgrounds and we don't know about them. And you don't read it on the news about a random guy on the street, right? You learn about them when you meet them at events and, or you sit next to them and like, oh, you do this too? Oh, we do this too, and that's the ice-breaking conversation that you have. And then you start to inspire each other. And that's the part that I like about co-working space, the open space, And what's interesting is what you mentioned, right? So the thing is, I had this problem also when I was pitching to Central Group and we weren't very good with infrastructure and AWS and stuff back in the days, right? And believe it or not, I bumped into somebody ex-Lazada. He was the ex-marketing VP of Lazada. And we just had a very casual conversation. Turns out he lives in the same building. And then it turns out that this guy, he's an AWS expert, like to the highest level,
Right.
And then I said, would you be interested to come into the meeting with Central and crack this with me because I'm not getting past this. We have everything ready. They're about to sign a contract, but then there's this that they're asking for, and they said if you don't give this, they don't sign the contract. Right. And then I met this guy at Hubba.
Right.
Very random because we work really late. He works really late. I work really late. And one day I'm like, oh, hey, what do you do? And all that stuff. And he's the fundamental guy who comes in and then changes all of that. And then we signed a multi-million deal out of all of that. And if I would think that I was in a fixed office away from that co-working space, how would I fix all of these problems,
And in a way, your approach to having a non-fixed physical location, in a way, is a mindset as well.
Yeah, that's very true.
You understand what I mean? In other words, it's not just this idea that I don't want to be in one space. It's this idea that I want to be open to all potential opportunities and all potential ideas. And if I don't have these sort of serendipitous interactions with people, I can't succeed, right? I also have this idea of like no one succeeds alone. So you could kick ass with your presentation, but if you're missing the infrastructure part, and if you weren't at work at 11 o'clock at night and the other guy was there, and you're both tired and you're just going, hey, what do you do? And he says, oh, I'm an AWS infrastructure expert. And you're like, done. I mean, it's longer than that. It's obviously a longer conversation than that, but it's kind of like that over time. Like, can you come to a meeting with me? And then your potential client at the time, what was it? The central group says, now we're okay. Now we trust the fact that you can do this. It's transformational for you as a businessman. But again, it's a learning thing too, right? Because now you know the next time you have a gap, you can figure out how to fill that gap as opposed to just going, the answer is no.
I would say it's a randomness of things that happens in your life that actually bring you to where you are today. When I start to realize that it's this randomness, I started to realize when I started selling, I hated selling 2 years ago. I would hate selling so bad. But because we work with like a sales seminar company and I think I sat in the room way too much, it started to influence me. Yeah, so I started like that's how I call myself, like the lead hustler, right? I just started from how do I go from zero investment in my company. I started with literally zero, sitting in Hubba, trying to find 16,000 baht to go and set up my company, and I was like digging into my bank account and all that stuff because I remember going broke twice during the startup life. But the thing was. This hustling started to teach me that, you're not going to close all the sales. It's a numbers game, right? You have to meet 10 people and then you're going to close one.
I love it. So I call this the conversion problem. Yeah, no one talks about it. But yeah, all of life to me is a conversion problem. Sorry, go ahead.
And then think about this, that you don't have a huge database to put a bet on 10,000 people before you can close 100 sales, like something like that. Yep. So that means that you really have to go out there and meet so many people that's going to connect to that close lead, like that close sales. And sometimes you don't really, you're not a sales expert. You don't start with a big strategy and then you have a perfect strategy to go out there. I'm going to meet the right target audience. I'm going to meet the right person who's going to close this deal for me. You don't know who's that person until you go out there and realize that, out of 20 people, there are actually these 3 people that actually could close deals for me. And then you start to expand on those 3 people and find out who are the other 30 people, like how you do a lookalike audience in Facebook, right? That's the fundamental of marketing and sales. And the thing is, how do you start? You start by going random. It's the action that counts. It's not like who you meet, but it's actually how many people you meet at the start. To spread your seeds, like to how you put your seeds everywhere, and then one day eventually they're going to call you back, and that's how we got into a life pal and all of that. That it's a long background, but the thing was, because I started meeting a lot of people, I started engaging a lot of people, learning a lot of new tech from people. Some guy from Brazil, nomad, sitting at Hubba, I met him at a northern food restaurant. Like, he wasn't even at Hubba, but he was lining up, and I was like, "Hey, interesting. What do you do here?" and all that stuff. And I was like, "Yeah, I sit at Hubba." "Oh, I'm at Hubba too." It's very random. And this guy built our first chatbot, like literally 3 years ago or something like that. I told him, don't build a messenger chatbot, build a line chatbot, because nobody has built a line chatbot before. And I was like, yeah, sure. So we had like an experimental ticket buying experience on chatbot like 2 or 3 years ago or something. So it started with that. And how I got into building LivePal, this is a very interesting story. We've been working with TechSauce for the last 3 or 4 years. And again, TechSauce, I met the Hubba guys first.
Right, because you're sitting there AIM was in Hubba almost every day, at least at the beginning. Right?
Yeah.
Towards the end.
So AIM was the CEO. Yeah. I met AIM first, and then I met Charles. Right. And I remember the exact moment when Charles walked up to me in Hubba and said, "Dave, I think we're considering you for 2018 sales. We want to move to your platform."
But why? Who were they using before that for ticket sales?
They've used a bunch of startups in the market. I mean, the 2 main ones. I don't know before that if they use like the ThaiTicketMajor and all of that stuff. But they've tried everything basically in the market, and I kind of knew their pains, and what we were building actually matches that. It kind of like solves their problems. TechSauce was I remember the CEO telling me that it's a leap of faith that we're going with you, so you better
don't mess it up.
don't mess it up. And then 8 months later, we tripled their sales on the first year, and that was crazy because.
But what does that mean? In other words, because I read that, right? But what does that mean? You tripled their sales. What did you do that was different? And I'm genuinely curious, right? Like, what did you do that was different? Because the people that they were using beforehand were also ticketing experts. I don't remember who they were using, but remember, I've spoken at TechSauce. I've known AIM for, almost 10 years now, right? So.
Yeah. Do you want me to get into that right away, or?
No, I'm just curious. This is actually me. I'm curious.
Okay. Maybe this is a bit of introduction about SoldOutt. Then SoldOutt is actually a platform that I decided to build based on a lot of ticketing experience. I never wanted to get back into ticketing. I used to work at ThaiTicketMajor. I built a lot of the tech.
So do you write code as well?
I prefer not to. I don't call myself a programmer. But
you said you built the technology. So what does that mean?
So at one point, I built the first mobile ticketing platform for Major Cineplex. The first time ever that you can actually go to majorcineplex.com on a mobile and select.
But again, did you write that code, or did you just architect it out and kind of design it?
I think that was the first corporate level project that I built personally, front end only. So I worked with a back end team. So we have a ThaiTicketMajor IT team that builds the seating plans and stuff like that in the movie theaters and stuff like that, right? So I would work with them for the seating plans, for the placing orders, for the tickets and stuff like that. But I was experimenting with responsive design at a time where in Thailand nobody was doing it. So basically, I built that personally. Why would I get into coding? For one simple reason. I loved innovation so much. I was learning a lot about innovation I remember there was this website called Delicious, right? It's a bookmarking service, and it's dead now, but I think it's the biggest invention of all time for sharing content and for curated content. I would go to Delicious every day, and it would suggest me what are the new tools and new ideas or new like JavaScript libraries that you can play around with, and then it'll make your website look cool, right? I read that every day on my taxi ride to the office every day. And on some days I would show this to the team. It's like, hey, you know what? This is really cool. Why don't you try this? But then that's the office environment that I was telling you about. People in corporate world, they punch in, punch out, right? And I am a guy who would sit in the office till 10 at night, or maybe sometimes till 1 or 2 in the morning at the Channel 3 building so that I can learn something new. But the other guys would leave first, right? So I don't expect them to take my idea and go build it right away in 3 days or 5 days. And I'm so excited. I'm like, whoa, this is going to change the world and all of that stuff. That's when I started getting into coding, because I realized that nobody is listening to me and nobody's getting what I'm trying to do here, And eventually I pitched this mobile ticketing concept to the CEO of Major Cineplex back then. And he was like, yeah, very interesting. It was the first time ever that you can actually go and select seats on a mobile device and then make payment and get a ticket, so you can go to the theater and use that ticket right away. This was back in 2011 or 2010 or something like that. So that was the turning point for me, where I'm like, in an office environment, I understand that, okay, people go to work, they have scope, they don't want to get out of their task list, right? But I'm a guy, if you don't get out of your task list, you don't innovate. So I think it kind of came from that idea, that how I got into ticketing, how I started coding and all of that stuff. And then a few years, I think about 3 or 4 years later, I decided, because I started hearing a lot of problems in the event and ticketing market. The platforms out there, what they do is they only offer the platform and they charge a fee for it. Like they charge a commission fee for it for the sales that come through the platform. What was missing from what I hear from a lot of customers, right, was that it doesn't really boost your sales.
Do you want to know how I collaborate with some of the best brands in the world at Asia Tech Podcast? I use Podmetrics. This is the best way to connect to your favorite brands and monetize your podcast. If you are a podcaster, you can sign up now at podmetrics.co and use the referral code Asia Tech Podcast, all one word, to get full control of your show's monetization, regardless of your show's size. And if you're a brand and want to collaborate with the Asia Tech Podcast, head over to advertiser.podmetrics.co, it's spelled like it sounds, and sign up now.
So for TechSauce, right, when they approached us and they saw that this kind of matches with what they were looking for, like especially our approach to the platform being focused on selling the data that we collect, the marketing data. We personally built this thing that, as I mentioned before, like the things that I want on my dashboard that I could not get by requesting programmers to build it, right? And I decided, you know what, I'll do it myself. So I remember sitting on this like 2 days. I just built all the reports myself. I've never written MySQL queries before, and like for reports, and I just nailed it in 2 days. And there's still stuff that I still don't know how to do, but I just managed to get it together. But the interesting thing that we try to do is like we collect, like, for example, we know that somebody who's coming from Facebook, what's their conversion rate, what's their all of that, how much revenue you earn from that lead from Facebook, from Google, from usually you use tools like you need like Facebook dashboard and all of that. And most of the platforms don't allow you to track end to end. That's like the most important thing. Like if you're running a very big event and you're looking at like millions of revenues, right? And you can't depend on like black hole of data. Like what I mean is that you can't send traffic to a third party service, and then after that, you don't know what happened to that customer. You only see the end sales, right? And that don't make sense to a lot of like big event organizers. But what we do is we connect that line for them. They know exactly what happened with that customer to the level of, this is crazy. What we do is part of the selling process, right? We actually do calling to customers who don't pay right away, right? If they register for a ticket, we call and we collect that data to understand why they are not making that payment right away, what's stopping them and stuff like that. We also give them insight on why people would not buy or why people would not attend the event, so that they can go and fix the issues, or we can fix that issue if possible.
But what does that mean? Do you maintain your own call center, or do you outsource the call center when you have an event that needs you to do that? Because you're not hiring 100 people all the time, right?
We have full-time staff for this. Okay. But when I say this, right, it's not like we have a lot of staff. No, it doesn't take that much staff, because here's an interesting thing. We've done this for 4 years plus now. We've already fixed most of the problems that we know that people would have while buying a ticket, except for the subjective or the fundamental effect that the economy has or the situation has. Those things are different. Like those are subjective stuff. But what's tangible is, like, for example, somebody who cannot make a payment for some reason. He uses a US credit card and he's not getting authorized and things like that. We've already gone through all of those cases. And our approach to fixing these issues are not like ad hoc. It's basically taking that issue and then analyzing that, how do we do this in the long term? And one thing that SoldOutt does is that we do a lot of screen recordings to understand that when a problem comes, we watch exactly what people are doing, and then how do we change the UI in a way to take them in the right direction rather than like getting them lost. So we do a lot of this UX and UI study and stuff like that. I do a couple of, like, I've done talks on this at SASIN at the other, and I'm working with a startup right now to actually go and train them and actually help them redesign the UI to focus on sales, right? That's actually the fundamental SoldOutt. We came with a point where if a platform has to sell tickets for a big event, right, it's not supposed to just manage the operation side of things. It should manage the marketing side. It should, it should take over. It should understand sales really well, and it should also add on the consulting layer, right? Like platforms out there don't give you consulting on how to boost ticket sales. We do that for free, right? We go back to TechSauce and tell them, here, I can see your numbers. You can actually make potentially 50% more ticket sales on this. And then I draw up a plan for them and I tell them that follow these steps. and then we'll hit those numbers.
And how do you get paid? In other words, do you get paid if you triple sales? Do you get a percentage of sales, or is it a different agreement with every potential client? How does that work?
We have a standard fee, like tier-based fee, right? If you sell more, you actually pay less, just like any other platforms out there. We charge roughly the same, but the only difference is that we put our efforts on boosting your sales rather than just giving you just the platform, right? The platform is really basic for us now. I mean, the operation side of things, right? SoldOutt focuses on how to build a platform to close more sales rather than how to build a platform to help with operation side
to
of
process
event.
Just to process the ticket creation, which you're right should be like a commodity business in a way, right? Because the technology that does that, it's not off the shelf, but it can't be that hard to build.
Yeah. Because now I think selling anything online isn't that difficult anymore. But selling tickets has a different journey to it, right? It's similar to e-commerce, but the journey is different, right? And I can't put them in the same bucket, but you have to understand one thing, that a customer journey for buying a ticket, sometimes if you don't drill down or if you don't scrutinize it a lot, you don't understand that people are dropping off a lot. Like we went from, like, our platform has this interesting number where before TechSauce, we were closing 70% of sales, or 50 to 70% of sales of people who register for a ticket. Like 50 to 70 would pay for it, right? But when TechSauce came, we changed our strategies altogether and we took that number to 90%. We make sure that if somebody has to register for a ticket, why would they not pay and go to the event, right? Because we found out that this number was really, really low on the other platforms. When we used to sell, like when I was doing event consulting for a sales seminar company and they were using other platforms, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, why would you have like 50% drop off on the platform? That means the platform is not supposed to give value or add on the content, right? It's supposed to close sales. Your job is just supposed to close sales. You're supposed to make sure that tech supports people making payments so fast, able to pay credit cards really quickly, or get all that information after they've made the payment and stuff like that. But the idea is you need to make that experience so easy that it closes sales really fast. We went from 50 or 40% drop off, and now we only have 10% drop offs for TechSauce. That's crazy because we boosted the number that way. And those 10% that don't make a payment, we can tell TechSauce that why they're not making a payment, because we know, because we talk to them. And that's interesting. Why? Because for the upcoming years that they have to do events, right? They need this kind of data. They need to know, like, how would they grow sales? How would they change? How would they pivot to a new idea, right? One interesting thing that we do also, we call it sales hacking. What we try to do with TechSauce is that instead of trying to pace out the sales throughout let's say they open up sales like 8 months in advance, right? But what we did with 2019 is that we open up sales 365 days in advance, and on the first day of sales we could hit like $1 million plus in sales, right? On the first days,
even a year beforehand.
Yes.
So people actually paying, not just people registering thinking, I'll go to the event.
Yeah. So when you say people actually pay, right, there's a lot of thought process that go through. How do we get there? How do we go to a point from not having an event that exists next year and skeptical about launching a sale because nobody would pay for the tickets,
right,
to how do we package it in such a way that people would buy? I was a lot inspired by, the fear of missing out and like scarcity model and stuff. Like, we changed the way that TechSauce sells tickets from 2018, 2019. We changed it altogether. I have this graph that shows that TechSauce used to sell like tickets only during the end of the month, coincides with the product, the campaigns that we do.
Yeah, I got it.
And then paydays and stuff like that.
Right.
And then we changed that graph from, so in the graph, you would imagine you would have like a peak at the end of the month. And then for the next month, you'll see a lot of gap, like a big gap until the end of the month. And you see another peak in sales, right? We saw that. It was quite interesting. We took that graph, went to the TechSauce team, the executive team, and said, like, you know what, this doesn't make sense. You guys buy advertising every day. You buy Facebook ads, but then you get sales only at the end of the month. What happened to the rest of the the month, right? We introduced a new concept, a new strategy to drive sales every day. And after that, technically, we were getting at least we would get ticket sales every day, right? And the graph would change. That was the big jump that we helped them on the first year.
What changed? In other words, what was the change in the marketing strategy?
So in a simple sense, we actually changed from a time-based promotion or time-based campaign to a scarcity-based campaign. So imagine if you were to buy tickets, and the whole entire world uses this campaign, right? Early bird campaigns, like the idea of early bird where you buy early and then
buy
cheaper
before
prices.
buy before February 3rd and you get 50% off kind of thing. Yeah.
And you just said it yourself, buy before February 3rd, right?
Yeah.
What happens if I tell you get 50% off if you buy by 3rd of next month? Would you buy it today?
No way.
You'll buy it on the 2nd, on the 3rd,
Yeah,
right?
I'm just waiting.
Nobody's going to set a reminder on your phone, buy it on that day.
No way. And to be fair, I think it annoys a lot of people because they understand the sales tactic.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's true. People see that pattern. And what happens is if you don't see an ad on Facebook on the 2nd or the 3rd of February that's saying last day, buy now.
Yeah.
Let's say you don't go to Facebook on that day at all.
Then you're not going to buy.
Then you're not going to see an ad, and then I lost you as a customer.
Yes.
Right. That's the thing that I realized that it didn't make sense. It didn't make sense that you run early birds. For me, it's there's this when I do a talk, I say that early bird actually kills sales. Why? Because you don't realize that if your product is good enough, if your price point is good enough, if your offer is very good, you're supposed to close that sale right away. You don't tell the customer to wait 15 days to buy it. It doesn't make sense. So we changed that. We said, let's forget about time-based. Don't put a time on it. Put the quantity on it. If you don't buy today, there's 7 tickets left. It might be 7 tomorrow, but it might be 0 as well, right? That's basically fear of missing out. It's what Lazada does, and they do it a lot now. I mean, what we did 3 years ago, now they do it every 11-11, 12-12 campaign.
They do this on Agoda, right? You go for a hotel and they're there are only 3 rooms left and 2 people just bought.
Exactly, yeah. Agoda does that. It was a lot in the travel industry, but nobody has applied all of this on events. Nobody would think of doing this on events or on. I mean, e-commerce is it's required now. I would imagine that Lazada makes more money on a one campaign day than they make in the rest of the 29 days, of the month, right? And they would probably budget it that way that, they have to make so much money on one single day, enough to cover the entire month's KPI, something like that. It's kind of changing the mindset of selling a little bit. Instead of just throwing the product out there and waiting for customers to buy, run a nice campaign and everything, to actually pushing the customer to buy with you in the shortest span of time, right? And taking the time-based factor out of the picture and putting in the scarcity model, because people know if they miss out there's this UI that we created on SoldOutt that tells the users when they land on the page that if you've missed 5 prices already, it started from, let's say, for example, 1,500 baht.
Right.
The current price is 4,000, but you missed the 1,500, you missed 2,000, you missed 2,500. It actually shows you that all those prices are sold, right? And we do it in such a way that people see and then, I missed a lot of prices already.
I don't want to miss this one kind of thing.
Yeah, I don't want to miss this one because there's only 5 tickets left or something like that. So those kind of things that we implemented actually brought in a lot of quick sales. And one thing interesting is in the virtual summit, the TechSauce virtual summit we did in June, right? Last year. It was a new concept. We've never done a virtual conference that big on that scale and sold tickets and stuff like that. And we closed about, I think, 3,000 people or something. But what's interesting in that event is that 70% of the people who landed on SoldOutt, right, made a payment within 5 minutes. Right? If they've registered for a ticket, they would make a payment in 5 minutes. That's the quickest we've done. And when you say that your drop-offs, I'm not talking about drop-offs yet. I'm talking about the amount of people that actually would finish a sale that fast is already 70%. You have much less of problems to fix, right?
Yeah. And do you keep data on different locations? In other words, a lot of people used to come from overseas to TechSauce, right? When they first started doing these events. And do you see different data on different geographies? particularly from a payment and a closing perspective?
Oh, we do. But we know the majority of the people have to be in Thailand to join the event, right? But we do have this global audience where they buy a ticket and they fly down and all of that, like especially in Southeast Asia, right?
Right.
We do have a tap on that because we do make calls on this. So I would have a different person who calls in English, right? So these people who book a ticket and don't make a payment will get insight data on that particular segment. We also run events outside. For example, in Hong Kong, so we would actually do the cold call as well to customers in Hong Kong from here to understand what's going on. Why are they not paying? For example, there's an event that was hosted in Asia Expo. It's next to the airport, and to travel from the city to the airport takes about 45 minutes and a couple of dollars, Hong Kong dollars, right? Which is it's basically obstacles to sales for me, right? So we found this out that people were actually complaining about this through cold calling, right? We called up a few people and we found out that there's we have to travel too far and we have to pay for the tickets. So eventually we shared this insight with the organizer, right? And they decided to give out free train tickets to anyone who would buy a ticket to the event, right?
Which makes sense, right? Because if there's profit built into the ticketing, then the train is just incidental.
Yeah. What I see from this is that you have to, when you take a step back and see sales from a higher level, right, you have to know that there's a journey to all of this, from learning about the event to taking out your credit card and putting in the number, right? There's a story to that. And you're basically connecting the dots, right? If you don't see these dots connected and it's missing something is breaking somewhere, it's your role to fix it. It's not your customer's role to go and figure out how to solve all those problems, right? I'm not talking about just like technical problems. I'm talking about even the value and what you connect in your customers' minds, right? When you add value by selling this product. For example, if you have to join a TechSauce event, are you telling them that when they join this, there's a good chance that they're going to get funding, but there's a story to getting to that funding? Now, the only way to go there is to buy a ticket, join the event, meet these people and all that stuff. Have you connected that story in people's mind already? Because otherwise they won't buy your ticket. They don't see what's in it for me factor, right? They don't know why would they go to this event, right? Now, a lot of this data, TechSauce has done this for over 10 years. They know how to sell, right? But there's still that missing gap of what happens after they've learned all that information and they still don't buy. There's still a big chunk out there that don't buy, right? So we go and drill on that data and then try to convert that into sales, basically.
Is there a way to use the stuff that you've learned in other verticals? In other words, ticketing, understood. I get it completely. It's more, so SoldOutt is more than just a back-end infrastructure to take information, time, date, venue, and sell. You're doing something that's way more complicated and way more nuanced than that as well. Plus, there's also a human element to it where you have humans call people and say, why? But on the flip side, if it's all about sales, right?
Yeah, at the end of the day, the product is just one pillar, right?
Is there a way to use this? Like, I'm just thinking about auto sales, like the new Toyota Fortuners coming out.
Yeah.
We have 10 of them that are on sale at a slightly lower price, 15% below the MSRP, manufacturer suggested retail price.
Yeah.
But it's just 10.
It's, when you said that it's cheaper, that's already the price point wins already, right? The product, it's a new Fortuna. Fortuna has been, it's a popular car. It's a good product. If you can get it cheaper, you'd rather get it cheaper than the full price. The timing of the launch might be a little bit crazy because of, you can't do test drives or you might be able to do test drive if you fix that. Like if you connect that dot, that's a basic fundamental that I'm trying to say, that if you connect that dot, for example, if somebody's interested and you give them the information that if you book today, we'll we'll take the car to your house and you can test drive it. Something like that. You connect that dot.
But how about even like at the Auto Expo? Every year they have an Auto Expo in Bangkok, right? They have it out at I forget the name of it, at Impact, right? If you come to Impact and you can get 20% off, because then the marketing can also continue on to that, right? We have 15 cars, they all get 20% off, but it's only the 15, and if you don't come on like by day 3, you're going to miss out. And then Toyota gets to say something, again, using your technology and using the stuff that you've learned, they get to say something like record sales at the Auto Expo this year for whatever the thing is. And then that also drives the FOMO that you were talking about.
Sure.
And then you can use that for other things too. I'm just wondering if there's a way to use this that's outside of the ticket realm, but still use the same methodology and the same technology that you've built. Because again, your thing doesn't say tickets in the name. It just says sold out. So it's a sales tool more than a ticketing tool for sure. Yeah.
I think luckily I named it that. I didn't name it. The interesting thing is the TechSauce executive. It was Charles. Yeah, I went to Charles and I was like, I need to rebrand my company because I think we got something really, really big here. We're not an event ticketing company. We're a sales-focused company. And he just said this, and don't name your company that ends with ticket.
Ticket, yeah.
Or event. Just get out of that realm and then he came up with this name, like, why don't you call yourself Sold Out? I was like, interesting. That's actually a challenge to me, to name the company like that and then to follow it. Because back then we were doing good with sales, but when we named the company Sold Out, it gave me chills because it's a huge challenge for me to name it like that, and it's a big impact word, right? And
well, you have to live up to it then as well.
Yeah,
right?
I have to live up to it, and we just change our mindset altogether from there. We didn't focus on ticketing actually last year. We tried to venture it out into other products as well, not because of COVID, but we've done that before already. We did that back like 3 years ago or something. We actually have an e-commerce module where I remember a customer would say that, buying through this is much easier than buying through Lazada. I like this whole experience. I personally called up that customer to ask, how did you feel about the experience and everything? And she said that, and I was like, whoa, I like that. Because I never completely launched the e-commerce model because we were more focused on the event. But from there on, we pivoted. There's an interesting story last year that how we went from doing ticket sales hacking to a restaurant sales hacking. And I don't know if you've heard of Taiki, the Homburg burger. The guy young guy who basically came up with his own recipe of burger, and he went like world famous like overnight one day around 2 years ago, and he started getting like bookings 4 months in advance
in Thailand.
And he was in Haba. He was doing all of this out of the food lab in Haba. So I mean, I knew him 3+ years ago, back in the like Hapa days, and he was a barista before. He would make coffee. He tried to get really good at coffee and it didn't work out. And then he started working on his burger. And then one day, this Drew Brinsky, he's a blogger, right? A video blogger, a travel guy, and he made a video on this guy talking about his burger, and it went 5 million views. And from then he became like famous all around Southeast Asia. Actually, from Tokyo, people are booking in advance before they fly into Thailand. From New York, he did pretty well then. But then during COVID, what happened was he planned to open his own restaurant. So all of this time, he never had a restaurant. People would go to his food lab. He would only have 4 seatings, and they would cook. He would spend about 45 minutes to an hour to cook the thing and explain how he cooks it and all that stuff, and then have that meal, right? And he would do this like private. And now he was about to open a restaurant, still the same concept, maybe 8 people or something like that. But COVID came, he started paying rent already, and then he lost a lot of money, right? And he called me up and he said, he calls like P Dave, right? So Dave, I need 250,000 baht. Otherwise, some guys are going to kill me. I have to, find this money, Right. Can I borrow? And he wrote me this long message to explain his whole situation. And then when I read it, I'm like, in this situation, I probably can't give you 250,000, but I also don't want you to go and borrow somebody else's money.
Right.
You have
That's more dangerous, yeah.
Yeah. How can you clear off your debt by getting another debt, right? You can't do that. If you borrow money from me, that means you have to pay me in the future, even though you've solved today's problem, but you'll have problems in the future as well.
Right. It's just the same problem transferred.
Yeah. And then I said, but you have the value that you've already created. Your burger is famous. You have a lot of following. People believe in what you build. That's a perfect recipe for sold out. Like for me, it's like, that's what I'm trying to connect the dots with, TechSauce with the other guys. Then I told him, you know what, I probably can give you 20,000 baht right now. I'll wire it to you. But one thing, promise me one thing. I gave him 1 hour lecture about this, that, you can actually build a value out of your brand, and we'll try and sell it, and we'll try to close 250,000 baht for you. I told him, and he was like, no, it's not possible. He hasn't done this before. He can't do it. I was like, SoldOutt will support everything. Like, think about it. And then he went back and he called me back at 9 at night. And it's like, Dave, I think I just have to sell like 160 vouchers, and then I'll already clear off my debt. I'm like, that's what I'm talking about. 1 week later, we modified our platform. We built this whole entire journey for them. I told him the story that he should talk about. Don't fool people. Be genuine. Tell them about the situation, and then let's try to sell this, right? Let's try to clear off your debt. Very simple. I told him that I'm not going to charge you any profit at all. You just pay for the credit card processing fee and all that stuff for the first 280,000 baht or whatever it is. And after that, I'll charge you whatever the market is charging, right? It's like, yeah, done deal. What's crazy is once we were working on this, and around 11 o'clock at night, right? We finished the platform, and he was like, let's post it next morning. People in Singapore already slept, and that's my target market. I'm like, Taiki, you know what? Let's post it now. If it doesn't work, we'll post it again in the morning. But let's just do it. Let's just go out there and do this already. So he posted at 11. Around midnight, we were doing 1,000 baht per minute in sales.
That's insane.
Yeah, we were doing we hit about 70,000 baht already in the first hour. And this is like at night. I think the next 2 days we did about 240,000 baht. He almost cleared out his debt in like literally in 2 days. 20 days later, we decided to shut down basically close the sales, because we couldn't sell anymore. Because if we sell more, we're gonna have cash flow problems, right? Because he's gonna put that money somewhere and like clear up his debt, and then he has to buy product like raw material to run it.
So it's almost like you're overselling, which is classic.
Yeah.
It's weird, right? Because this is like really sold out.
Yeah, because eventually after 20 days, we sold 500,000, and we sold way too many vouchers that he could handle. I mean, not way too many, but we have to kind of like pace it out, because people have to fly in, or if you open up the restaurants, it's 2 months advance queue already, right? He's not going to generate money during those 2 months because he already has this vouchers that he sold, right? So we had to pace it out a little bit. So we had to stop sales, right? But imagine from nothing, I'm saying from nothing, to building something out of this, right? Like clearing off his debts. My point for me is he's a brother to me. I wanted to change his mindset in this money thing. Don't think money in terms of borrowing money. Think money in terms of bringing value, and how do you create value out of it, and then solve your life problem out of it, right? And I'm glad that he said yes with that. And I'm glad that I have a case study to talk about now, because this case study I've shared with universities, and they got excited about this story, how you can go from 0 to 100 in days, and I've shared this story with, like, for example, with KTC. KTC invited SoldOutt to do a talk with their marketing team, and I shared with them the story, and they were interested to do a carnival, like hack sales, and because right now, not a lot of people are doing dine-in, right? And KTC's a lot of business comes from people using credit cards at restaurants, right? So this story would inspire them to build something like innovation projects with us, like that's good for me, because that's what we're doing here. That's the whole point of building all of this, boosting sales, and at the same time driving innovation in any area or any company that's possible, right? That's our story of like how we went into like selling for restaurants, selling vouchers. Last year we did we started selling health watches for one interesting product built by a Thai entrepreneur.
Dave, I really appreciate your time today. I want to thank Dave Malhotra for an amazing conversation, the CEO and lead hustler. And now that you've explained all this stuff, now I understand why you say the lead hustler at SoldOutt and the founder at ShakeSphere. And to me, the combination of the innovation building with sort of the accelerated sales mechanism that SoldOutt provides, now I understand why those two things are so powerful together. I really appreciate your time today. That was awesome, Dave. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Michael. Those words inspire us as well. And thanks for the time that I hope that I've inspired people out there. And I think in the crisis, in the situations like this, I have a lot of interesting stories that we went from 0 to 100 ourselves, changing, pivoted, and all that stuff. But I think this is a great time to innovate because I see the market this way, that when a pandemic hits like this and when the economy crashes, they call it the Z0, right? Everybody goes down to on a plane or basically a single, like they're on the same level.
Everybody gets reset, right?
Yeah, it gets reset. That means it's an opportunity for you to get out there and shine, because any good innovation that you do right now will get a lot of spotlight. 2 years ago, if you do some kind of innovation, there's a lot of noise in the market.
A lot of noise, yeah exactly.
But now if you do anything, you'll get that attention. And you see this, a lot of startups in the world today that went from 0 to like probably a unicorn. Like there's a lot of startups that worked on events and now they're so big that they acquire other company to add on to their value. And it's crazy because how would you change from this situation to a situation where you can build a unicorn, right? And this applies to Thailand because I think we're in a very lucky country where opportunity is abundant. I have to thank, I'm Thai, but I wanted to get out of Thailand to go and explore opportunities. But I know that this country gives you more opportunities than you can ask for anywhere around the world because we still have a lot of ideas to implement and it at cheap. I'm not saying that you have to hire expensive or you have to spend a lot to experiment that idea. In Thailand, everything is reasonable enough to experiment ideas every day, Yeah,
I'm super happy to be building my company here because it just gives me an opportunity that wouldn't exist in so many other places. And you're right, there's so many great stories to tell here and so many great opportunities, and particularly with this reset to 0, which has been very painful for a lot of people. Yeah. It's created opportunities for others that understand to take care of. Anyway, that's great.
Yeah, and I believe that we both, I think expats, nomads, Thais, they can do it. They can use Thailand as a base to do all of this. And this is a great opportunity to do it.
The views and opinions expressed by the podcast creators, hosts, and guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy and position of Podcast Network Asia. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.